Okay, it looks like it's recording now. Okay.
You have your
Yeah, it's
right, I guess. Hopefully that's good memory. Well, you can do it on your computer. I probably will write it down. I only have one paper. Okay, everyone. Sorry about the late start. The other class got out pretty late. So I guess we'll just start right now. So the first slot will be Natalie Owen, and then the rules are it'll be 4 minutes of presentation. We'll be timing you, so I'll give you like a little wave when it's about 1 minute left, and then we'll cut you off at 4 minutes because we kind of don't want this to go like really long. I know you guys don't want to be here for a really long time, so we'll just kind of make this pretty quick as possible.
How do you control it? Could you like stand over there? Oh yeah.
You can stand here when I
I'll just stand here.
And then we'll give a chance for one question from the audience. So we'll be reading your report, so if we have any questions, we'll just get it from the report, I guess. You can get that through.
Alright, so our project is gaze estimation on mobile devices with deep convolutional networks. Our problem statement is that a primary way that users interact with their devices is through gaze or by looking at their screen. So we were hoping to take advantage of this and develop a way to estimate the user's focus on the screen through gaze estimation. And this has numerous applications in psychology, computer vision, human-computer interaction, and many more.
So some of the previous work that we studied was like in the MIT CSAI lab, they built both a data set and a neural network, which are called like gaze capture and eye tracker, respectively. And what they did was they got Amazon Mechanical Turk and took pictures of people's faces while they tracked the dot across the screen. And they captured photos of like the face and the eyes and as well as the face grid of where it was now. And they ran a convolutional neural net on that, try to predict like in centimeters where the point they were looking at on the screen was. And so what we're trying to do is sort of replicate this paper and also add other techniques that are taught in like CS231A to try to like improve on their results, because their results are mostly just it's just like a very simple neural net. They didn't add up very many like hog techniques or anything like that. So yeah.
So more information on the data set. It was released by a group at MIT and is called Gaze Capture. They tracked 1,474 participants. All these participants were told to track a dot across the screen while the front-facing camera recorded their eye location and face. There was a lot of error checking that went in to try to clean the data set as much as possible before it was released, so we didn't have to do any of that. Specifically, there are 2.5 million images and their corresponding dot locations. They also did eye detection and face detection, but we decided to do that on our own using an OpenCV library.
Alright, so the standard input features are basically the training images are in a size of 144 by 3 channels, and we have data on 4 inputs, which is the left eye, right eye, face, and the face mask, which we actually took the first 3 inputs. So the face mask is like on the 4th. We take those 3 inputs and feed them through our convolutional net that filters into our fully connected layer, and we bring in the face bounding box, and we use this to produce an output XY, where X is the left or the right coordinate from the camera, and Y is how far downwards the vertical axis the camera gaze is at.
Yeah, and so in addition to those inputs, we're also feeding like a 144 by 144 like hog histogram into it, so that it can better learn like face pose and stuff like that, because none of that was included in the original
So we're doing more extensions to the CNN. Theirs were like their results were pretty successful, but we're also exploring batch normalization because one of our primary problems was a lot of exploding gradients, and if we use these, if we use batch normalization, we can increase our chances of initializing in a good way, so that we can screw up our results.
So if we go back like a slide or two, it's worth noting that like the XY is sort of it's in a normalized space because it's like the X and the Y in centimeters from the camera, which makes it really useful to generalize to like other kind of devices such as laptops and stuff. Because the researchers use like iPads, iPhones, also.
Okay, stop.
Maybe we should. Can you get
Yeah, you should give it away.
Yeah, we saw.
Oh, okay, yeah, so we it was perfect. That was exactly all we needed. Okay, okay, cool. Thank you. One question.
Oh, is there any question from the audience?
How is your result compared to the paper you used? Our CNN is running right now.
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
cool.
Hi, I'm Tim, and I am working on, admittedly this is more of a work in progress than a final product, but I think actually I was eavesdropping on another group, they're doing the exact same thing, so you should probably get excited for their presentation because they're probably doing it better than I am. But piano note reconstruction from images. So you're given in, I think this was a TA suggestion, I think maybe Boris, yeah. So you're given a video, so the concept is that you're given a video of someone playing a piano, and maybe you lost the audio and you want to still be able to reconstruct which notes were played. So yeah, that's the mock scenario. And what I really did is I'm taking images and estimating from those because obviously a video is just a compilation of images. One thing that's particularly hard about this is that you're going to have to detect the keyboard, and a keyboard, depending on how you view it, looks very different from different angles. So doing like one of these standard neural network approaches didn't seem correct to me, but I'll explain what I am doing right now and where I'm at. So the roadmap, first I want to detect the keyboard before I can detect which keys are being pressed. And so I'm going to identify key points. I'm going to group the key points by lines perpendicular to the keys. I'll show you what that means. And then from that, I'm going to be able to identify each octave. An octave is just a unit of, it's like a doubling of the tonal series in music. And then from that, I can construct the regions for each key. And that's where I'm currently figuring out a good way to construct the regions from each key. Once you have the regions in the image from each key, assuming that the camera's on a tripod and it's not going to move, I'm going to use occlusion and deformation of those regions to try to identify which keys are pressed. And then finally, I think that I could probably come up with a pretty cool algorithm to group notes based off tonal compatibility. So you could do a ransack-like algorithm, just randomly iterating over the notes and figuring out which ones fit somewhat tonally. Like obviously you don't want minor fifths, so you can discard notes if they're not in the right tonal series. So identifying key points. I'm using a Harris corner detector from OpenCV. I just took a bunch of different videos of myself playing piano from different angles, and so I detect corners, and then I'm doing a non-maximal suppression, where basically I'm past, the Harris corner detector just returns a convoluted version of the images with different values of each pixel based off how likely they think that it's a corner. And so I run this sliding window over the image, and basically if the sliding window I think currently is 20 by 20, and if the center pixel is not the maximal value, so if the center pixel is not above a certain threshold and or is not the maximal value in that window, I don't add it. And that way I don't end up with too many key points, because there are a lot of values that are probably corners, but I want to make sure that they're far enough apart such that I get like a reasonable spacing between key points. Next, I group key points by how well they fit lines, because I can then identify these lines perpendicular to the keyboard. Obviously I get spurious lines sometimes, but then once I have these lines, I'm using ransack to do this, so just making guesses, finding inliers, outliers, and then I just choose the lines that have the most correspondence. And then to identify octaves, there's this handy thing where with the black keys, the spacing is even spacing between two, and then double the spacing, and then even spacing, and then double the spacing. And so I check for that pattern, and this way I can so actually depending on the angle, I do or do not detect the octaves correctly. For some reason, this tends to be the best angle. Here I can very, very robustly detect 3 octaves and no spurious octaves. And then from this, I'm hoping to be able to actually construct the keys. Cool, next. Any questions? Any questions? 0 questions.
Why do you think that angle is better?
Why do I think that angle is better? I think it's, I'm gonna do a projective transform to figure out the keys, and I think I don't have enough perpendicular faces to do the full single view reconstruction, but I think that if I manage to create a hacky projective transform, I will be able to get more proper octave correspondence, because I think the issue right now is if you're measuring those gaps, that's assuming no warping based off perspective. And so when the perspective does get warped, those distances that you know are absolute suddenly get skewed, and you're not going to get good matches.
Don't touch that too much.
Welcome to our presentation. I'm Wenqi.
I'm Jiajun.
Our project is about using computer vision to do the plant phototyping. Firstly, let's watch a video.
This is a very short video clip shows how industry is doing to apply computer visions into agriculture sectors. And this is a reading machine. It can detect different kind of plants and apply different chemicals to each individual plants.
Examples of typical plant phototyping problems are measuring plant size and shape, leaf area, and the plant stand count, which can be translated to object detection, classification, and segmentation in computer vision. Our data set, in terms of our data set, we have images with bounding box, segmented images. Totally, there are 1,000 images of individual plants and 77 images of the plant tree, as what is shown up here. Our project has 2 main tasks. One is plant detection. We use CNN with sliding window across the whole image as our approach, and latent SVM with hog features as the benchmark approach, which is very similar to what we did in the previous assignment. The second one is leaf segmentation. We use the graph cut algorithm to differentiate the foreground and background pixels. Foreground pixels correspond to the plant. As to the SVM with hog feature, the pipeline consists of the data pre-processing, hog feature computation, and the SVM classifier. In the testing stage, each test image will go through this pipeline to get several candidate bounding boxes, and then we apply the non-maximal separation to get the optimal one.
So on top of the SVM kernels, we try using CNN. So we have 2 CNN architecture. This first one is a simple CNN with 3 convolution layers and 3 max pooling layers. And the other one is SqueezeNAND. So the SqueezeNAND has a relatively similar accuracy as AlexNAND, but it's more efficient. So this is what is our training sets, how we generate training sets. So we have positive samples and negative samples. The positive samples are the image with the plants. So this is the result for the object detections. So it's doing nearly perfect on every individual plants. And the second one is at the same trail, but they have different size of the later growth stage of the plants, and still perform relatively well. And the other one is to show it can also perform very consistently on the different backgrounds. So this is the accuracy for different kernels. So as you can see, we use those images are generated by the CNN, so it's nearly perfect. The catch points for the SqueezeNAND is overfit a little bit. It's really overfit a little bit than the ComNAND. But SVM doesn't perform well because the plants have different shapes. They have different numbers of the leaves, so the SVM is not good. So the last part is the graph cut algorithms. So we apply, after we have the bounding box for the object detections, we apply graph in that bounding box regions. This is the plants at different stages. You can see at the early stage, the plants are very small, it's still perfect. And when the plants grow bigger, some of the leaves are missing. So what might be the reasons? So those are the bounding box corresponding to the images. As the plants goes bigger, because with the fixed size of the sliding windows, the leaves stretch out of the bounding box, so the graph part doesn't do perfect. And this one is an extreme case, because the background and foreground has similar colors, they are very greenish, so that's the graph part algorithm fails. So that's all for our presentation.
I have a quick question. Are you sure that your model is actually learned to identify plants rather than just identifying green versus brown? Because when I look at the images, it's kind of like, you don't even have to know what a plant is. You just say, oh, well, this is green and everything else is brown, therefore it's kind of a very easy detection. Do you kind of have a sense that your model is actually learning about plants?
At the moment, we try to use that classifier to do the payload. The payload has different colors. It's more green towards bluish, and it's doing pretty well as well. I guess it learns the circular shape of the pots and also the plants as well in some way.
Hi, my project is on real-time traffic sign detection and recognition. Pretty classic problem in computer vision. Happens a lot of the classic problems as well. I'm going to start with a brief overview of the data set I'm working with. I wanted to work with US traffic signs just because I live in the United States, it's more relevant to me. So I picked the license traffic sign data set, the only real data set on US traffic signs available. What's included in the data set are annotated tracks and annotated frames, all originated from source videos that are not included in the actual data set. I mostly work with the annotated frames, but I'm hoping to look at the tracks too to get a real-time sense of how quickly now we can operate it. So the lifespan frame annotation consists of a tag, which is the sign type. So in this case, a pedestrian crossing can also be a speed limit sign. Any type of sign really. Up to 47 signs are, actually 47 signs are included in this data set in the different annotations. Positions also indicated, so bounding boxes for all signs that we've seen. Whether the sign is occluded by a pole or a tree or something, and whether it's on the main road or on the side road. I'm less interested in being able to determine if a sign is relevant to the car in question, and more just being able to detect signs in general and recognizing what they are. So the signs included in this data set are enumerated over here. There's 47 total signs, and they're annotated across 7,855 sign annotations. There's a lot of different signs used in the United States, and a lot of them are not included in this data set. A lot of these sign types are very textual, and in these sign cases, using OCR is a lot of times more effective than using a machine learning type algorithm. So for more pictorial type signs, machine learning is a pretty good application, so that's what I explored for this project. My detection right now is really bad. I detect the sky with really good accuracy. You can see the stop sign right here. Right now I try to use a histogram oriented gradients and linear SVM to try to detect. And originally I tried feeding every sign type I could into it to get a generalized sign detector, and that didn't work. So I tried one sign type, the stop signs here. Still doesn't work. Trying to play with it a little bit more, but if it doesn't work, then I'm going to move on to the old Jones detector using hard type features. It takes the same type of data as the SVM does, so it should be relatively easy to implement. OpenCV has a utility for generating samples and for training your cascade, so it seems pretty straightforward with the data that I already have. And also, I looked in the literature a little bit to see if there's a reason why the SVM detector fails. And there's a lot of reasons, actually. I'm not going to go into too many of them, but the hard-like feature detector typically works a lot better for these types of signs, so I'm not going to go. Into the actual sign recognition, feed in positive images and tags. It's really easy to crop your signs from your source data because bounding boxes are provided. So do that, feed it into your convolutional neural network, and train it, and it gives you your predictions. I scale all of these signs to the same dimensions. I scale them to 32 by 32, and I apply a histogram equalization across them to increase the contrast initially. Afterwards, I train it with a TensorFlow, and results are really good. After about 100 training epochs, it usually converges on about 94% prediction efficiency, and it's capable of classifying signs as 5,000 signs per second, so really fast too. A lot of these are really poor quality. Some of these I can't even guess myself, and the algorithm is still able to. A lot of these images before they're scaled up are like 10 by 10 pixels, so it's really impressive. And for times it messes up, it's sometimes really close, like when it guesses a speed limit sign is a different speed limit. Okay, thank you.
The results you just showed us on test, is that on the training set or test set?
This is on my test set. Yeah. So I keep some data aside for testing. And I'm looking to have some kind of regularization where I go back and forth between testing the two of them to see if I'm overfitting or not. But right now I have some pretty basic L2 regularization with that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm David, and I've been working trying to understand some of the visual features used in deep reinforcement learning, so inside of a convolutional neural network. So just a primer, when you say deep reinforcement learning, what are you doing? You're taking generally some sort of input frame, a lot of times a vision problem. You're passing it into a convolutional neural network, and then you're using the learned features from that network to do some sort of reinforcement learning, Q-learning, policy gradient, whatever. In this project, we're working with Atari. It's sort of a classic problem. You're trying to play an Atari game successfully using reinforcement learning based just on the pixels. Cool. The problem is a lot of people treat reinforcement learning as like a magical black box, or sorry, convolutional neural networks as a magical black box that makes the problems go away. And so what we want to know is what is actually happening there, how does it compare to more traditional vision tasks, and really explore what's happening for reinforcement learning specifically. So the first thing, just as a motivating example, is play Pong and compare using a deep Q network, which is sort of the standard since Google did in 2011, to features that I check by hand. So the standard features for the game Pong, you'd expect paddle position, ball position, etc. So that's, like, intuitively, that's all you would need to play Pong. But still, the DQN kills a agent trained on these features of where everything is. So something else is going on, so let's dive in and try to find out why that's happening. So let's dive into what the convolutional net's doing. So the first way to do that is to look at the actual filters that are being learned and figure out when they're activating based on frames. So the frames we're going to look at are these two, and we'll step through the network and figure out what's going on. So this is in the first layer, and what you can see is really low-level things being detected. So the position of all of the bricks that are missing in breakout are here in this first layer. The position of the paddle, the position of the ball is sort of blurry there. But consistently, this filter picks out all of those things. So really, this is the same thing as what I was doing. It's like all of the relevant information is right here in this filter. And just motivatingly, here are a couple of standard feature detectors, and you can see they detect the same thing. They detect paddles, corners where bricks are missing, and the ball, right? So at the very baseline, the first layer of the network is doing exactly this. The third layer of the network, which is the last one, tracks the position of the ball for the last 4 frames, for instance. So these blurs right here are just exactly where the ball's been, right? So you're taking these brute force features of everything, and the network successfully turns them into what is relevant. And then using these features, which it has learned, it has scaled, it's done everything to, it's going to map them into some sort of hidden space that it can really use to learn the problem efficiently. So one thing we can do to look at that is we can use TS&E to reduce the dimensionality of one of these hidden layers and really map frames directly into how the neural network is using them. So this is breakout, and it's going to be really small and hard to see, so I'll walk you through it. On the left side is all of the states where a lot of bricks have been broken, and on the right, there are no bricks broken. This is reinforcement learning needs to specifically learn the value, so that's that, or how good a state is, so that's that. On the top, the ball is at the bottom of the screen. On the bottom, the ball's at the top of the screen. So right, this internal state is saying how good is this screen, and geometrically, what should I be doing, and where's the ball, and that sort of thing. So this is the hidden layer right before it predicts the Q values for each state. Yeah, so, yeah, cool. Any questions? Yeah.
So does this imply that if you're given the positions of all the bricks, then you could do the same thing? Because it seems like the filters that you were showing in the beginning were showing like positions and velocity of the ball.
Right, so the really nice thing, like, yeah, intuitively you could do the same thing. The nice thing that happens in the CompNet is it trains and like scales all of those automatically, right? So it learns how to scale those features. It learns how to like shift those features in a way that they're like perfectly usable for a reinforcement learning task. So same information, but this learns to scale everything perfectly too. Cool, thank you very much.
Alright guys, so for our project, we created an end-to-end Sudoku solver. The goal is basically to be able to go from an input of an image of a Sudoku board, modify the image in a way that's usable by the computer, solve the problem, and then superimpose the solutions back onto the board, or state that the problem is not solvable given maybe the user's incorrect inputs.
So previous work since Madonna's project, there's one GitHub up here that I posted. Who guesses that if a CM were applied to this problem, the results would be much better, which is exactly what we intend to do. Other solvers do exist, but they use optical character recognition, not intelligent character recognition, as machine learning is classified. And also, there was one project for 231A last year that used similar method to solve something called the Kakura puzzle.
And so to derive a solution, we used a couple data sets. We used the MMIST for handwritten digits in case like somebody had already like inputted some of the solution in, as well as the CAR74K in order to isolate out the computer printed digits. We're using a data set for testing of a bunch of printed Sudoku puzzles, as well as just handwritten Sudoku puzzles that we take pictures of inside books. And the class topics that we hoped to approach with this was edge detection, feature detection, image rectification, and the classification of actual digits within the cells. This is our general pipeline for how we kind of approach the solution is we apply kind of a Gaussian blur in order to isolate out the noise and really kind of feature out the things. Binarization to turn the features, I guess, more prominently outside of the rest of the features of the boxes. Dilation to further isolate out the features. Corner detection and rectification to actually get the grid out to a more adaptable thing that we could work with. Cell extraction, then applying the CNN to those and printing out an algorithm for the final solution.
So here we have an example of our corner detection in action. We use an OpenCV library function to find the contours, and so our strategy is basically finding the largest contour, which will usually be the greater size bounding box, and then use some reasoning, some max and min, x, y coordinates on that contour to extract the corners. And here we use the corners then for work perspective. So on the left we have our slightly skewed Sudoku puzzle, and here's the crop rectified. What we intend to extract this.
Yeah, and then so for the digit recognition part, we use a convolutional neural network with 2 convolutional layers, 2 max pooling layers, dropout, and 2 fully connected layers at the end. And then just kind of as is expected, this task has been relatively solved, and we've been able to get good results with this.
So moving forward, we definitely want to be able to make this a very robust system. We want to be able to take like very skewed pictures of the puzzle, and be able to then rectify that and have our network still figure out what digits are there. Similar pipeline, which we was 2-3 seconds. We definitely hope to speed that up. We try to optimize what we can get that faster.
Yeah, so basically looking for robustness in terms of camera angle and then also brightness. Yeah, and then just speed of the object. Any questions?
Your 2-3 seconds, where is the slowness coming from?
So this was actually looking just like a documentation from another project. So we actually don't know what like
Give
what
your best guess. Where's the slowest one?
as we have it implemented right now, probably solving the puzzle, the game logic, would definitely be the slowest part.
Do you think you can speed that up?
There's a lot of, I've been reading a lot about Sudoku strategy, so there's a lot of just more complicated ways to do it. So just if we have time.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jeff, and my project was detecting car accidents using tracking. A little bit about the problem. Car accidents affect millions of people every year, and a lot of accidents occur because people run red lights. And at these traffic intersections, there are usually red light cameras to try to make people, and they take pictures of people running red lights to try to make them stop doing it. And my project was set up whether these cameras can be used to also detect accidents in the intersection. For my data set, I used YouTube traffic camera compilation crash videos. And yeah. So there's been a lot of previous work in detecting cars because of the rise of autonomous driving. Some of these approaches have been template-based. Some have been used optical flow and background subtraction. One paper I read was on histogram of flow gradients to track cars and logistic regression to model the probability of an accident occurring, and these are just a few. My first approach was a template-based approach using the Viral-Jones template-based approach, which basically uses hard features, and then some kind of training and then cascading classifiers to spend time classifying more where there's like a possibility of an object occurring. And I didn't have great results. I had a lot of false positives and would miss certain frames, which made it hard to realistically track the cars. So I went on to my second approach, which was optical flow. So optical flow assumes two things. It assumes that the pixel intensities of objects don't change from frame to frame, and it also assumes that neighboring pixels have similar motion. So the first step was finding features to track, and to do this I just used a Hewlett corner detector. I tracked 100 features in the scene. And then I used the Lucas Canade built-in OpenCV optical flow solver, which just takes patches around each feature and uses least squares to solve optical flow equations and get the locations of the features in the next frame. So this allows me to track the positions of each feature from each frame. And then I used the positions to calculate the velocity and accelerations of the features across the frame. So here's the acceleration of all the features, and then this is the change in direction of all the features. And this is the multiplication of these two, because an accident is likely to occur if there's a high change in acceleration and a high acceleration and a high change in direction. This is the feature with the highest value of change in direction and acceleration, and it's shown here in the frame. This is the frame where the accident occurred, and that's the location of the feature. Sorry. Here's some more example detections. In each of these frames, it does a pretty good job of detecting the correct time and the correct location of where the accident occurs. So some conclusions: template-based approaches struggle across frames and weren't as robust as optical flow, which work much better. Out of the 25 crash videos I currently have, it correctly detects the time and location of 18, and it generally works better when there's fewer cars in the scene. There's less noise and less features to track. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Michael. This is Loki, and we're going to talk about our project that deals with music. So, as I said before, the problem is recognizing keys from piano video. So, how do you go from images to sheet music? Some people have tried to do it from sound. This has several advantages and drawbacks. And here we try to do it from the video, which has different kind of advantages and drawbacks, but mainly you can isolate one instrument in an orchestra. So here we have a setup which is a keyboard, and we have two fixed cameras, one on the right, one on the left, so we get these kind of images. And we assume that we see the whole keyboard, and we assume that the cameras are fixed here. And so our method is in two steps. First, we want to identify the keyboard and map it to a virtual keyboard. And then, once we have this transformation, we have the key detection part.
So our first step is to extract out the white keys in the keyboard. So we convert the image to hue, saturation, value space, where hue lets us filter out skin tone, saturation lets us filter out pixels with color, and value lets us extract out the high brightness pixels. So we do a simple thresholding on each channel and combine them to get a segmentation of all the white pixels in the image. Then our next step is to fill in all these holes. So we use the watershed filling algorithm to give us a cleaner segmentation of these regions. And in this particular frame, the hand is occluding the keyboard. So it's split into two regions and we want to connect them. So we do some sort of smearing with dilation along the major direction using feasible component analysis. And that lets us extract out this region, and we can throw away everything else, giving us this final segmentation. From this segmentation, we want to extract the corners of the keyboard. And so we just find the extreme corners of our outline. And we can't find the top left corner because there are no white pixels there. And so we take a line starting vertically and then rotate it until it hits the keyboard. And then from there, we take the points nearby and fit a least squares line through that. And so we can take the intersection of this line with the intersection with the line of these two top points, and that gives us the last corner. And given the four corners of the keyboard, we want to map this to a virtual 2D keyboard. And so we have 4 points, which give us 8 correspondences, and we can solve for the 3x3 transformation matrix up to scale. And this is the projected keyboard.
So then, once we have this transformation, we want to detect the keys. And to do that, we identify first the baseline frame in our video. And this baseline frame, mainly, we don't want the hands to be there. And then the purpose is to compare this frame to the current frame. So now we have a given frame for which we already computed the transformation. We just do the difference between the two. And we get that kind of image. And with another thresholding operation, then we can detect that zone here in green where the key was pressed. Now that since we have the transformation, we just map that green zone to the virtual keyboard, and then we just have to count where that thing is. So here it's a C4, for example. So we have taken first videos of playing one key with one finger, and for these videos, in one camera we have a 90-95% accuracy for the white keys, and for the black keys it's a little bit less easy. Now if we have 2 cameras, then we can have a weighted prediction, because the prediction is more robust in the zone of where the camera is. So on the right for right camera and left for the left camera. This method is quite sensitive to noise in the corner detection, mainly at the corners that are farther away from the camera. So we can filter that to avoid that problem, but we still have a little bit of noise that comes here. And and we have also a problem of occlusion by the hand, which is difficult to solve. That's it. Do you have any questions?
You ever thought about square view?
About what?
A square view.
Like a bird's eye directly looking down at the keyboard from the top.
So yeah,
there were some papers that implemented the bird's eye view, and we wanted to do like any perspective.
But for us, since we extensively use the fact that we have a side view here to detect that zone, I don't think this method would work that well if we look from the top.
So this is kind of complex. I'm going to try to speed through it. There are a lot of equations I don't really want to get into. So the main idea, So the main idea of object tracking is, or generalized object tracking, is to follow some object that the user has chosen to select for, so this frame here, and then after some t sequences, which read time frames, so video frames, you want to actually predict some bounding box on the object at that later point. So the paper I've been following follows roughly this disgusting model, but the idea here mainly is that since we're looking at time frames, recurrent networks are generally quite a good first pass approach. So notice that they use two different networks. The first one to first encode the image into some vector that we can actually use, and then we give it the bounding box at the beginning time, and then we try to output our predictions at later time points. So on the observation network, that's really read CNN. So you just it really literally almost is a black box, except that we want to extract, I don't really want to get too much into it. We heard a little bit more about why CNNs tend to work well for these kinds of things. But the idea here is to extract our features and then use those that represent representative of our images into our recurrent net so that we can learn from them. So to kind of recap, we use two networks. The first one is an upstream CNN that generates our embeddings, so image embeddings, and then an RNN which we use with locations, vectors, and the second one that generates predictions. Okay, so so that's just a recap, and then inside our RNN is where we use reinforcement learning. As it turns out, the intuition here is to look at the predictions as a given policy, and so to do that, we generalize our rewards as how correct our bounding box is. So we want something better, as we have more overlap between boxes, which these two reward functions really roughly kind of capture, and then this one where it's worse, where they don't overlap quite as much, the centers are a little bit farther, and so we get the idea that that the boxes are a little bit have more overlap. So ideally, we try to, with the recurrent net and kind of averaging, taking long-term rewards, we try to follow the object as it moves, as opposed to at a single time point. And because we don't have, frame by frame, this is where where the object is at each time. So preliminarily, it doesn't really work so well the way I've done it. We start with some bounding box, which doesn't quite capture it, but we see that by frame 6, we're still following roughly where it is. It's worth noting that sometimes the frame will actually output the wrong one at the first one. So we'll have in some other experiments, we'll have the first bounding box be over here, where it's completely wrong. And then we'll somehow still migrate over here to kind of very roughly still follow where the person is. So we see that it kind of works in the sense that we're trying to maximize long-term rewards. We look for where the object is towards the end of the time frame, but maybe not so well kind of at the beginning. So, yeah.
I'm Michael, and I'm going to be talking about a context-enhanced OCR system on recipe videos. And I'm sure some of you guys have seen these videos that kind of go on so far. They quickly iterate through all these recipes and the steps that are involved in this long recipe. But one of the problems is that usually they're only accompanied by a single title, so it's impossible to search through which ingredients you might have and kind of get a good filtering on what you actually could make. So a natural approach to this would be to use an OCR system on what's in the annotated frames. The problem is that because often the backgrounds kind of obscure the text, as well as often they're much more pixelated than this, you often see even Google's OCR system fails to actually correctly identify paprika. So my approach was to use an image classifier using a sliding window to identify which recipes corresponded, and then you could do kind of an NLP correspondence system between what an OCR system did, as shown in this flow. So my project was kind of focused on making an ingredient-based image classifier. I didn't want to retrain a gigantic image classifier, so I leveraged Google's Inception model, which takes 3 weeks and 8 GPUs to train. completely. But what you can do is actually take one of the last fully connected layers and pull that out almost as like it's a feature matrix of what you see. And you can retrain from there on your own subset of labels. So here's a good example. This is reshaped. It's actually a 2048 dimension vector. And I've just reshaped it here so it could fit. But that's an image of rice, and here's what its associated inception or vector is. So just looking at the t-spin plots from what's outputted from the inception model, this is all of the 20 ingredients that I was initially concerned with, based off images that I grabbed from Azure. The data set's around like 38,000 images right now. And you can see some clustering, but for the most part, it's really hard to separate out stuff right there. You can start to see some differences when you actually just compare ingredient to ingredient. Here it's kind of interesting because rice and baking powder are obviously both white kind of granulated ingredients, so there's not as much separation. But if you look at chicken and baking powder, you can kind of see somewhat of a clear separation in the dimensionality reduction plot. From those vectors, I actually have built a 5-layer convolutional neural net just to learn from those inception pushed out vectors what ingredients correspond. And I've actually started to get pretty good accuracy so far. You can see that I've actually like almost got perfect training accuracy, but the test accuracy is kind of maxing out at 80%, and I'm convinced that that's probably just because it's overfitting to the training set, even though it's quite large. So I'm probably going to start introducing dropout to overcome the overfitting. But that's where it's at right now, and I'm pretty happy with it. I haven't yet linked it up with an OCR system to get the full pipeline working, but I'm confident that once that's both linked up, I'll probably be able to get good annotations on the ingredient of this.
Was inspired from one of the ideas by a TA. And we decided to add a bit flavor to it as well. So the problem statement is that the user gives the bounding box around an object in the first frame of the video, and our object tracker keeps tracking the same object throughout the end of the video. And the flavor that we tried to add to this was we also tried to reconstruct the object in 3D at the same time that we track it. So the approach that we use is a 4-step approach. We first segment the object in each of the frames in the video. Then we detect corresponding features on those segmented objects, and we use optical flow tracker to get feature correspondences between the frames, and then ultimately we use a 3D construction approach, that something like what we did in the class. So for the data set, we used the WAT 2013 data set, which has sequences, which are 16 sequences with ground truth bounding boxes, and it has objects like common objects like cup, shoes, ice skate. Okay, so in our object segmentation step, we propose a novel 2-step method which also forms like an object tracker. So we use the local kernel density estimation to get a bounding box around the next frame given the bounding box in the previous frame and the previous frame of the video. And this bounding box is usually is a very liberal estimate of the object. For further filtering, we use the graph cut algorithm to get a more clean segmentation of the object. So we have one of the segmented. So this is segmentation of one of the cup sequence. So the white mask shows our segmentation. Sometimes it fails, but then we reinitialize and we count the number of times we reinitialize to measure the robustness of our tracker. So given the time, I won't show the other ones. So there are 2 measures we use for measuring the accuracy of to evaluate our tracker. One is the accuracy, which measures the average overlap between the ground truth bounding box as in the data set and our predicted bounding box. And second is robustness, which is basically the number of times we need to reinitialize each time our method fails. So these results can be given in the form of an accuracy versus robustness plot. So these are the ones of the tracker submitted by other trackers submitted as a part of the WARP challenge, and that there is our tracker, which is somewhat between the best and the worst tracker submitted. But yeah, ours was like a novel method, so we are happy about it. So yeah, these are like for 4 sequences, and we are somewhere close to the best and worst ones. Okay, so I would like to actually skip the pros and cons because we need to talk about the reconstruction as well.
Yeah, so for our reconstruction pipeline that we have, of course, first thing we have to do is detect our initial features. So we implemented our own version of the Sheet-Mashi quarter detection algorithm. And so this is one of the results that we got on that cup image there. So without going into too much detail. Now, in order to get the feature points in subsequent frames, we use the Lucas-Canadi optical flow algorithm, as someone's mentioned before. So yeah, it assumes similar intensity of pixels and that all objects in a given area move around the same, they have the same sort of movement. We're currently working on implementing this ourselves, and we're currently using the OpenCV version at the moment. Now for 3D reconstruction, we're just using structure from motion to hopefully get back some good results. And we've gone over that in class, so I'll just keep going. And here's our okay results. That don't look like that. Yeah, that was pretty chilly anyway.
Any questions?
Cool.
I'm Albert Chu. I'm going to be talking about my project recognition of human emotions from facial expressions. So motion recognition has a lot of different applications. For example, in homeland security, if you're trying to detect if someone's nervous or lying, also uses in marketing and education. So previous work, I looked at 2 different papers, one from 2004 and one from 2015. And they got around 85% and 90% accuracy. And then just to reiterate, like the problem statement is about recognizing emotions on faces. And based on the different data sets and their labeling, that's the kind of emotions that I was trying to recognize. So the data sets, the first one is a CK data set from 2010. It has 326 colored black and white photos about like 123 people, and it has 7 emotional states. I also used the LFW data set from 2007. It has a lot more images, a lot more people, but it's labeled by names, not emotions, so I had to hand label 216 images. And I used 4 emotional states based on like the papers. And then I divided the images into the training, dev, and test sets in a ratio of 60 to 20 to 20. So for pre-processing, what I did was for each image, I made it into grayscale, normalized the values, and then used it should be hard cascade filter actually. And you get the bounding boxes for the face, the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. And I also made sure to scale the face images so that they should all be the same size. And I also divided that scaled face image into 5 parts to get more components. I used non-match suppression on the bounding box selection and also spatial constraints on face parts, so your eyes should be above the nose, which should be above the mouth. So here's a diagram of the feature vector. So like talked about, there's like the scaling and then dividing face into 5 sections. So the features I was looking at was hog, histogram of oriented gradients on the face image, and then PCA on each of these smaller parts like the eyes, the nose, mouth, and then these 5 sections. So for machine learning, I've currently implemented and tested SVM and neural network. I'm working on recurring neural networks with LSTM right now. And these are the feature vectors I've tested for these. So on the data, for the first data set, I got around like 80 to 90% accuracy, so 85% accuracy with the SVM. And HOG really does well, outperforms PCA. Neural network, you can get slightly higher, like 92-ish%. And then the second one, the accuracy is a lot lower. It's around like 40 to 50, so like 45%. And here's like 55% with neural network. And I can talk a bit about the differences between the data sets. So that's actually one of the conclusions I want to talk about. So the data set, the first one, the CK plus data set, it's straight post-face images, and the emotions are really exaggerated because it's like people asking them to display this emotion. And then the LFW is like lots of random images, varying poses, and the expressions are a lot more natural. And HOG really did well, especially on the first one, and so did SVM. Challenges was hand labeling the second data set. Future work, tuning recurring neural networks with LSTM, and then those accuracies were on the dev set, so testing it on the test data, and also using confusion matrices and investigating and seeing like which emotions are being confused for which emotions. All right, thank you.
why are you using LSTM?
I just thought that it might outperform just neural networks by itself.
It's just a non-intuitive model.
Oh, really? Okay.
That's all.
That's just like I've learned it from machine learning classes, so I thought I'd apply it.
Feel free.
Okay.
Why do you record? Give a good analysis.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Okay. All right, thank you.
Hi, I'm Naranjan, and I did lung cancer detection. So lung cancer is bad, but it's fairly deadly. But if it's detected in the earlier stages, like stage 1 or stage 2, it's a much higher chance of survival. So the goal here is to take data for patients, CT scan images, which is 3D images of patients who either have stage 1 or stage 2 cancer or don't have any cancer, and predict whether or not they have cancer. And this is a difficult problem because, as you can see, like that is the cancer that we're trying to detect the presence of, given this entire image. And this is a 3D image, so it's a difficult problem, but yeah, we'll do it computer vision. So the first step is pre-processing. The CT scan image includes a lot of stuff that we don't need, like bone and air, which is not really helpful for us. We're mostly interested in the tissue, which is where the cancer will be. So from segmentation, I looked at a couple of different approaches for segmentation, but basic thresholding seemed to be the most effective for extracting the tissue segment. Yeah. So I used a couple of different feature representations. First was raw pixels, which you can see on the left. This is a hog, but I used 3D gradients, 3D hog, and this is just like a 2D slice of the hog. And I also used blob detection using difference of Gaussians. So my first feature representation was raw pixels. Second representation was a concatenation of the various bins of the hog with the blob detection. So like there were 15 bins and one hog detection, so 16 features, I guess. So I used a number of different classifiers to actually train a model and predict. First was a baseline linear classifier. Next was a baseline CNN, which you can see this is the architecture, a couple of CNN layers, just like a random black box of different various kinds of layers. And also a deep CNN, which is modeled off of GoogleNet, which is a architecture used for image classification. And, the advantage of GoogleNet is it has this inception module, which is a trick that they use to have a lot of layers, but minimize the parameters and make it more efficient. I'm also doing regularization because I observe a lot of overfitting, so dropout and L2. And these are the results thus far. I'm still training GoogleNet. It's taking a while to train, but GoogleNet seems to be performing the best. Linear is a baseline model, and it seems to do worse with like the hog and blob detection than actual raw pixels, but it's a baseline model, so I didn't expect it to do well anyway. It does all right, but not well. Yeah, GoogleNet's still training, so hopefully, like, eventually it'll work better. But yeah, I do see a lot of overfitting, so maybe increase the regularization. One thing that I did was, see right here, this is just the tissue. This is the tissue including air nodules within the lung. A paper said that if you include air within the lung, then that tends to produce better results. But maybe in my case, like, it wouldn't, because, for example, if you look at this image, these are air nodules within the lung, but they, I don't know, maybe the CNN focuses on these things rather than the actual, like, tiny little cancer. So, yeah, those are some future stuff. Yes.
How large is that?
There are training set is about 1,200 images. CT scans.
CT scan, and for each CT scans, how many images?
Each CT scan is about 300 images of, so like about 200 images of like 300 by 300 images.
Some are not useful.
Yeah, yeah, so a lot of them are just like air,
Yeah.
or like, voxels of air or bone, so that's what we're maxing.
How many useful images are there?
Yeah, eventually we downsample. We like bound it so that we include the lung and not the extraneous air, and we downsample to make it 64 by 128 by 128 3 image.
So Connie and I worked on detecting and recognizing sea lions from aerial images. So why do we care? So some poor biologists sit in some government agency and spend 4 months manually counting different respective sea lion types from like thousands of aerial images. And so with computer vision, we hope to help speed up the task. I guess there's been no like previous effort done for this specific application, and so we looked at various different like object detection, template matching, counting methods, and experimented to see which one would possibly lead the best results.
So for a very basic approach, we just did simple block detection, and the idea is that each sea lion would be a block, and we looked at changing the parameters like the circularity and the inertia, but as you can see, even though it found a lot of the sea lions, there's also a lot of false positives from the grass and like in the waves. So next we tried hug features, which have been pretty successful in object detection. So we were trying to detect the sea lions, but that didn't do too well either. I don't know if you can even see the sea lions, but the rocks are pretty like irregular, and there's a lot of cracks that can also look like sea lions. So the gradients might not have been that helpful. And another problem with hug features is that convert to grayscale, so we're kind of losing some information from the color. And so we tried template matching next.
Yeah, and so we kind of hope to like address some of like the problems with like poses, like orientation, various irregularities in template matching. And so what we did was that we like manually found like 30 or so like templates from like 6 different sea lion types, and then we like rotated and forwarded all of them, and then ran the template matching over it using correlation coefficient as the comparison method. And so I guess like it's doing kind of okay. It does pick up some sea lions with respect to their types, but it also does pick up a bunch of like water landmarks and some rocks and grass as well. So it's been kind of frustrating.
So as we've mentioned a few times, there are a lot of false positives. And we're working on maybe a classifier to kind of distinguish sea lion foxes from like just the background ones. And some other challenges that we're dealing with is that the sea lions are pretty small within the image, so you can't see that much detail from them. And there's just like a big space to search through for a very small sea lion, so it's kind of hard to find them. And there's some occlusions from rocks and shadows, and then just different variations, which the template matching is not as robust to, so we're still trying to look into ways to improve.
That's it.
Yeah, so the template matching part, it seems like you have, so you're trying to help biologists count sea lions, you're not actually trying to detect sea lions. And it seems like you have as much false positives as there are false negatives. So do you think like overall like it's still an effective way to track sea lions?
So like I guess the problem's a little bit more nuanced because we're also supposed to help detect like which type of sea lion it is. Like is it an adult, is it a pup? And so I guess that's why we went with template matching, because there are some differences between like these respective classes. But it's not, it doesn't seem to be doing that hot either.
How big are the pixels in the image? But like how big are the sea lines?
About 75 by 75. Well, actually, that's the biggest one. The hubs are really small, maybe 5 by 5.
Hi everyone, I'm Axel. My project's on single-use semantic image segmentation. So the objective is to take an image and then kind of parse it into different areas that constitute different classes. You can think of it as a like glorified k-means of different classes. As you can see in this case, it's really important in self-driving cars and things like that, but it's not necessarily my focus. So the data I worked on, the Microsoft Cocoa data set, has a ton of different data. And I used the Python tool to kind of take all the annotations out of it. This data set also has captioning and all sorts of other different things, so just kind of extracted what I needed. And yeah, I also use TensorFlow for all the data pre-processing and ingestion, kind of normalizing all the hue, the brightness, all that, flipping. So I took a neural network approach to this. My first approach was to build an end-to-end model. Probably not the best idea, but this is kind of what it should look like. I do have some additional added things that I put in here. So we have convolutional layers that kind of encode your image into some smaller representation of what you can initially see, and then you decode it out into your segmentation. So then my second approach was to use a pre-trained model. So I looked into VGGNet. So essentially the first half of the model right here is the VGGNet, and then I mirrored it on the other side to decode the image. And then some post-processing that I did on it is a conditional random field. So out of the network, we get the probabilities for each pixel and all the different classes that you can have. So using your original image and using all these probabilities, you can use the kind of edge detections and things like that to figure out what the different classes might be and give it like a finer edge. So I explored a few different loss functions. I used cross entropy, but one was the direct output, so just comparing the full image versus my output, and then just kind of picking the regions of interest, because most images have like a ton of different background. So in order to speed up the learning, I just compared, where are the people, where's the animals, and just only those areas. There was a paper also that did a binary class comparison with this IOU approximation, which is kind of, someone talked about it earlier, which is like the intersection over the area. And so I'm trying to possibly implement a multi-class version of that, but I haven't tested it yet, so we'll see. So these are some results. The original image is on the left, the ground truth is in the second image, and then this is the output of the neural network, and this is the conditional random field. Yeah. So this is just another one, and you can see it gets confused. I think this is a cat, and it should be a dog. And so this is actually the other loss, where I only strictly compare, say, the animal itself, not really the background. And you see that these were pretty early results, and you see that it does predict some ambiguous classes on the outside, but it does pick up the actual object a little better.
So I've actually used SegNet before, and what I found, and actually a lot of these like end-to-end models, is that they overfit horrendously to the data set. So I'm curious, when you used Segnet or this other one, did you just download a pre-trainer or did you try training it yourself?
So Segnet, I kind of mirrored, like, I actually found it after I made my model, but yeah, I had the same idea of like encoding, decoding, and I put some more different kind of layers stacked on top of it. So for the Segnet version of it, I did train my own, and after like 10 pops, it wasn't really anything. But when I switched to the BGG pre-trained, strictly the encoder, not the decoder for first try.
Hi, I'm Thomas. My project is on deep view morphing. So view morphing is an application of epitopic geometry. You take two stereo images and try to synthesize an intermediate view from those two as shown here. And what's deep about deep view morphing is you try to do the whole thing in one shot using neural network instead of going through geometric steps and using different methods for each one. And as an additional goal, I try to also extract the depth information generated the disparity map as shown here. So this is mainly based off of DP morphing by G and Hall. And the approach they use is very similar to the standard geometric flow in that you generate rectified images, you generate correspondences, and because you get these well-defined outputs, you can also apply them to other problems, for example, depth mapping. So I use two data sets. The first is the Caltech 3D objects on turntable, which is, I think, pretty self-explanatory. So it's a pretty easy to use data set. So it's requires very minimal processing. You can just get started training immediately. So the second data set uses ShapeNet. So I take ShapeNet objects, render them at different angles. And because most rendering pipelines nowadays, they use intermediate output of depth mapping. So I can extract that and use it to train the depth construction neural network. So the architecture basically is as follows. You take the two input images, you use a CNN to compute the homographies, you apply the homographies, and then you take those rectified images, run them through another CNN, and that generates correspondences and the morphing, the blending mask. And then finally you resample, you morph the images using the correspondences, and then you blend them to get the final object using the blending mask. So the results on the Caltech data set, an interesting observation is that there's really not much rectification going on. This is the original, this is the rectified image. And I think the problem here is the object itself is pretty small compared to the rest of the image. So from a loss minimization point of view, it's actually better to get the background right than the foreground object, which is kind of not ideal. So you get better results from ShapeNet because the background is completely white. So you see here, you actually get some rectification. And the final result here, the shape is generally right. You get some blurring of details and you get some ghosting around the edges, but it's not bad. So as far as the depth mapping is not doing well at all. I mean, you're getting all the zeros, which means everything is infinity. So I'm currently debugging this, and I hopefully will miss the results by the end. So challenges. So one of the big challenges I think I face is the data sets I chose have large number of object classes. And the original paper, the first data set only had faces, and the second data set was only 4 ShapeNet categories versus I think I have 40 or so. So that makes it more challenging to train across a wide number of categories. Another challenge is training a homography is pretty difficult because just tiny changes in the matrix will lead to large changes in the rectified images, and you have to be really careful on initialization and the training rate. And the final challenge is it's a big neural network. It has like somewhere from 60 to 90 million parameters, and that makes it it's time consuming to train. It's hard to like do multiple experiments at once. Questions? Thank you.
Have a good day, all.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, that was actually on time. No problem. I prayed so you're being impressed. I actually got to go so long. I can't even imagine doing it.
It's also really interesting because we're doing the same project. Like, we're all doing it in like their.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
well, that's
I thought you were gonna come to the first.
Distribution, I can't.
But then, yeah.